Hello, I'm Mala, and I am here to interview Leilani on behalf of Elysium Lifestyle magazine. Today, we are going to be speaking about women's spaces and if they should be infiltrated or not. Well, hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here this evening. Obviously, it was a surprise to me. I was told and offered this opportunity. I was like, yes, yes, yes. I need to speak to Leilani about this very important topic because it is.
Yes, it is. It is really important.
And I think it's basically, to make clear, you want to protect sex-based rights for women and girls. We're not opposing transgenders. It's about the protection of what is, what has been, and mums, kids, etc. can utilize women's spaces without having to think about
A man being in there.
pretty much, pretty much. But also, I think it's really interesting to start with how J.K. Rowling got such a bad rap for this. And she kept on saying, which is why I wanted to start this interview with you, by saying, we're not opposed to transgender. There's nothing to say that people can't be and choose how to live their lives.
Absolutely. And this is the thing, it was so crazy to me seeing the amount of slack that she took from people, the amount of flack that people were giving her. And there was a guy called Graham Linehan as well, the comedian who wrote Father Ted, who was basically cancelled over it, which is completely insane. Just for standing up for women, basically, and their spaces and their private spaces and the bathrooms and changing rooms.
Yes.
When you go swimming with your child, you do not want a man walking into a place where he can be fully naked, on the pretense that he's a female. And just we've seen in Bern, I think it's Germany, that there was a man that I think it was at the Times or the Telegraph, one of
I think it was
those,
a Telegraph.
the
I
Telegraph,
think so.
called him a trans woman and said, this trans woman has been removed from a nudist female only Lido. Obviously, the women could tell that he was a male,
Mm.
but they framed it as a trans woman, but it's a man. Had been removed, and he was held, I think, by the police because he refused to leave. He was held, I think, for a couple of hours, and then actually the city said they misjudged the situation and it wasn't fair, and kind of apologized, which no one should be doing. I first read the headline, I thought, okay, they've removed a man, great. This is good. This is a positive move. Common sense is prevailing. And
Yeah.
then you find out they had to kind of make an apology and backtrack a little bit on it. But
Which I think is the big problem. Look, I live near
yes,
to Hampstead, so we have the Hampstead Ladies Pond, and there's been a whole major controversy about it. And actually, they've overruled it, and they allow. And for all these women who are in their 70s, this is just what they've done for years. They're just enjoying the nature and this wonderful pool that was
mm-hmm.
created and the environment that is in the middle of an enclave in London. And I just think, how how demotivating. I think it's depowering as well. And I think it's very interesting you talking about sort of children. As a mum myself of three kids, and I think about sort of like, just for example, going to London Zoo, just as an example,
Yes.
going into the loos now, my children are much older, but do I really want to take my child to the toilet and give them a gender lesson when all they want to do is relieve themselves and do a
So
wee?
no, no,
Which,
exactly. And it is a thing. And like you said, do what you want, dress as you want.
yes,
Who cares? But don't be using our spaces. And I was very vocal about this very early on because I lived in Los Angeles for a long time, and this
okay,
was happening a lot. So, for example, there are Korean spas, which are women only,
yes,
Korean spas. Now, in the Korean spas, you do strip down naked, and you're on a table and you're getting scrubbed down, and you are
yeah.
completely naked, and you're naked in this all over the whole entire place. And there was a man that had gone in. I think he even had a beard, but he just decided that to say that he was female, and a lady went up to the reception desk and she reported him, and the staff were just like, we can't do anything. He identifies as female, or she
This word identify, you
identifies.
know, it's a
And
bit
then to
like,
say she as well. Oh, well, she's identifying as female. Well, no, you know what? You can't just say, oh, I'm female when you've got, all your tackle, everything else, and just walk into a women's space so that the well, I don't, there probably weren't children there, but the females all have to, see everything hanging out. And then they won't do anything about it. Anyway, there happened to be protests about it, and it turned out that this guy had a record as a sex offender. Same thing happened in a West Hollywood gym. Down at the Beverly Center, there was a huge big deal because this lady, I don't remember her name, but she made a huge big deal because this man had walked into the women's dressing rooms and changing rooms. And, she was the one that got thrown out for making the big deal. Again, it turned out that he had assault cases on his ex-wife. So these are not just like, safe men to be around in a lot of the circumstances. And you've got to think, like, what kind of a man would do that, would want to actually go down, pretend they were female, and go into a woman's dressing room or changing room? So I think it's,
do you think it's a demographic thing as well, that women of a certain age feel more strongly about it than women in other, maybe, shall we say, other decade, being born in different decades, different demographics? Do you think that there is a different feeling? Do you think most women feel like they're being exploited, or they're feeling that it's quite frightening in some ways,
yeah,
I'm sure, to some women who have lived their lives without any of this kind of gender business going on. And we are talking about a very, very small population as well.
yes,
So I think there's a hell of a lot of, you know, bending and swaying towards
yeah,
loud noise and voices. And sometimes
yes.
the voices are very loud, but the actual demographic is quite small.
I mean, it's tiny. It's absolutely tiny, and we're just completely pandering to them and putting females in danger, I believe, by doing so. And I don't know if there's a certain demographic. I think it's that a certain demographic that are more strongly against it.
Yeah.
I think it's that at a certain age you feel more confident about being able to speak about it and speak
Yes.
out about it, and you just don't care anymore. It's like, I don't care. Like, one, I don't care how you dress in private
Yes.
or walking down the street, but when you come into our spaces, I have a big problem with it, and
Yeah.
I don't care about being very vocal about it anymore. Or, well, I never have been, or at my age, I should say. Whereas I think younger people do get concerned because they might be worried about their jobs or
They're
their
more, yeah.
futures. I mean, look at Riley Gaines, the swimmer who spoke out against Leah Thomas being in, female competitions,
Yeah.
and her not teammates, but her other female competitors were all kind of warned, you mustn't speak about this because it could impact your future. You're going to be seen as a transphobe. Well, guess what? I don't care. Label
Yeah.
me what you want. I know I'm not transphobic, but I do know that I want to protect female spaces.
Yeah.
So, I think you just get to a certain point where you're like, I have to say something, and I'm not just going to sit down, especially when it becomes, you're going shopping, um, you're in Marks and Spencer's bra section, and there's
Yeah.
some like dude that wants to come on with, and get measured out of the perversion of it, basically, or you have men going on female only dating sites that might be for lesbians, but then pretending that they're a lesbian, or it's a perversion. And then that happened in Australia where there was a female only dating site. I think it was Australia, and the lady, or it was a female only app, and the lady actually got sued for not letting this male, trans female, go onto the app. So,
But
this
it's
is where it
very,
all gets crazy.
it's crazy and very, very confusing. I mean, I recently went into quite a famous chain, to Wagamama's, and I was really interested because my husband came up to stairs and he said, it's really interesting. They don't have a totally male toilet. They have a mixed toilet and they have a female toilet, but there's no male toilet.
Oh,
Also, isn't that interesting? I just
that
thought that was
is
just really,
interesting.
really interesting. So I haven't done a Google schmoogle of it, but it was definitely the the placards, the round sort of diagrams on the doors was suggesting that there wasn't one for just for males.
Well, that actually is a little safer than having one that's like mixed
Which
and then one for males, which I've seen at places. They've gone like mixed, so the males dressing as females can go into that,
yes.
which females have to go to, and then the males have had their own separate
Yeah.
one. So it's good to at
So I
least
thought there
see,
was a bit of protection there without
yes,
subliminally, if you see what I mean, very gentle, but there seemed to be, I was quite kind of like, wow, okay, that's interesting. That's slightly different. It's a slight different lean or nod
yes,
towards. And also, one other thing I wanted to ask you about was that I feel a little bit like I've not seen many women dressed as men trying to go into the men's changing
no,
rooms. Isn't that interesting?
it is
That's
actually
what
very
really freaks me
interesting.
out because I feel like as women, we've been so put down and we've found our voice, we've found all these things, and all of a sudden it's happening all over again, but in a very kind of like gentle, masked way.
Yes,
But it's
yeah.
men infiltrating. If you think about it, there's no woman dressing as a man or a man who is biologically a female wanting to go into male spaces. I've not read about that.
No, because I don't think um I definitely don't think it's as big as of a deal, and it definitely doesn't put any of the men in kind of the danger that women would be put in. So, like, if we look at it, as I said, when I was living in Los Angeles, you saw the madness there. I was told by some of my English friends that I was being a little bit hysterical, but I was like, no, what happens in America finds its way here. So then you have cases like there were the nurses and their hospital changing room, there was a man that just kept on using it, saying that he identified as a woman. I don't know how many cases there are in the UK, but I know there are some. But even in jails, where in the USA you will have convicted rapists being housed amongst women in jails because they've identified as a female, and they have even got in other inmates pregnant. So this is the situation in America where it's gone completely nuts. And hopefully, it doesn't get to that point in the UK because we have a voice and we can see what's happened there and can potentially try and stop it before it does happen. And then before you have to start reversing all these new kind of laws that come in.
It's trying to
But
unpick it all, isn't it, as well? There's so many layers. And I mean, I do think like we definitely had a little bit of a pushback when Trump came in America.
yes,
There was definitely, but obviously every state is run differently. So there's a lot of power um division and a lot of sort of like pushing and pulling.
yeah,
But I do think privacy deserves acknowledgement.
absolutely. I think that's a really good way of
Yeah,
saying it. I absolutely do, and as we keep saying, there are places that they can be and express themselves as they want, but
yeah,
women's spaces are not that. And you see, even like, whether it's women's hostels, women's changing rooms, women's dressing rooms, women's bathrooms,
yeah.
women's jails, women's wards in hospitals. There's and then what gets it's even worse is when you start hearing about the lawsuits about how these men have tried to sue women. For example, there was one man that wanted a bikini wax, but he was a man, and this poor lady only did female bikini waxes. That's what she did. He's come in, but he's no, but I identify as female. Well, she's got to try and do his whole tackle and everything else,
Yes.
and then went and tried to sue her. So this is another thing that happened in the States. So it just gets really, really crazy. And I think, thankfully, like you said, there's been some pushback.
Yeah.
Finally, there are some, you know, some of our ministers are recognizing that men cannot be women,
And
and
that
we
women
need
are
to look at
not being
biology. Yeah,
intolerant. And I think that that's something that's really important, isn't it? That we're not being intolerant. It's not intolerance. It's actually a human right.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And you see this, and there is, I think, as well, is that there is this push from the mainstream media. I can't stand the mainstream
Me
media.
too. I love what you talk about. I love you on Dan Wootton. I get very excited when you jump on the screen, okay?
Thank
Um,
you.
yes, I do. Because I just think we need to challenge, and the more that we challenge the mainstream media, the MSN, um, I think the better. And I think that the way that they are treating journalists who are not being governed by the ombudsmans are not journalists. This is crazy. We are now having we're now got the ability to hear something on both sides and to make
Yeah.
educated decisions.
Yeah, and you know, you see it in the mainstream media. You will see them describe what is clearly a man
Yeah.
as a woman. You know, it's so bad to front. You will, you know, Page Six, which I think is part of an American newspaper, just was like, well, there's been outrage because Queen Camilla has hosted J.K. Rowling, you know, and has been photographed with her. Well, first of all, MSM. Um, there's and I'm not a monarchist, but I'm not gonna. No one I've heard of has been outraged about Queen Camilla taking a photo with J.K. Rowling. So this is all
And
just made up nonsense. It
yeah,
obviously, clearly, it's one or two people. Is it the New York Post that has Page Six? It's one or two people there that have decided to go and look through probably some bot accounts of
yes,
people upset and then actually put that out as news. Like,
yes. And the
no,
reason she was actually seeing was actually for the most beautiful, beautiful reason for helping with children, education, books, storytelling, which is what we need. We need to go back a bit more to analog and for kids to
yes.
read books and for them to be immersed in that story, to put themselves in that story. I'm very much a believer of the story, my story, and putting yourself in your own story. And that's actually what she was there to do. And I think that's a real shame because for a woman who has brought so much joy,
Mm.
pleasure, and I mean, the films and books that we will be watching forever and that we still, but this seems to be something that's very easy. We condemn very, very quickly. And especially when it comes to women, that's okay. Which
Yeah,
I
no,
find really interesting, seeing as we're supposed to have this more powerful voice.
no, I totally agree. But you know what I do love about J.K. Rowling is that throughout all the flack that she's got, she's like stood up for it and she's doubled down. And you
Yeah,
know that it all comes from wanting to protect, uh, you know, children. And you know, she's written her books for kids. She's, you know, you can see that she absolutely adores the younger generation,
yes.
and she doesn't want to see them harmed. You know, and you know, we could talk about kids, sorry, female only spaces and everything else, but then you also have to look at, you know, what's happening to children and the indoctrination of children, and to think that they can, and to tell children, okay, yeah, maybe you were born in the wrong body. What happened to no one's born in the wrong body, love yourself as you are, you know, all of this that
I
we were all
approve of
taught.
myself. Let's go back to Louise Hay. I'm a big fan of the approve of yourself, unapologetically, utilizing mindset, mindfulness. I think there is a lot to be said, Leilani. I think there is a lot to be said for grounding and for people's. I think we're all after COVID and all of, I think people are
Yes.
very, very, very stressed, very anxious. They have a lot of anxiety running through their bodies. We then start questioning.
And you
Maybe
know
the
what?
questions, go on. I'll
Yeah,
interrupt you.
no, I'm so glad you brought up COVID, because I think this became a real start for kids, especially in the UK. They were stuck at
In their
home. They
bedrooms.
in their bedrooms. They
What
weren't
shall I
allowed.
do? Let me think about something that isn't really something I'd normally think about.
And then you have all those crazy TikTok influencers, the like Dylan Mulvaney, that are getting popular on absolute nonsense. I mean, look at what that guy actually started his career by doing, like day one, day two of girlhood, a grown adult man dressing up as a little girl with pigtails. I mean, it was completely perverse. And he was getting followers and followers and followers, and
If
young
you were at
people.
university, he was being hailed as something that was so like pioneering. I was like,
Yeah.
I was like to my daughter, what is your view? What's the view? What's going on?
And even younger people, and even younger than university
Yeah,
age,
yeah,
were like
yeah.
on there. And then I can't remember the name of the other one. There's a horrific other one that was always trying to tell parents, to tell kids to like separate from
From
their
their
parents
parents. Oh
if
my,
their parents don't approve. And we had this during COVID when these kids were just stuck at home, not allowed to play sports, not allowed to be with their friends, not allowed to do anything social that children do. And
do.
all they had was these crazy people on their timelines telling them that they should hate their bodies and that they should be in a different body and to go and take hormones and to go and operate and to do all of these things. And to me, and this is what J.K. Rowling has been upset with. When you're older and
Yeah.
you decide you want to dress as a woman or dress as a man or pretend you're something else or come across as something else or identify as something, then fine. But when you're a child, leave the children alone. And
Yeah.
that's all J.K. Rowling has said. Leave
Yes.
them alone. Let
Yes.
them just like,
I felt
I wanted to be a
alone.
horse
Oh,
when I was
yeah,
when I
absolutely.
was 6 years.
One of my
I
children
galloped
wants to be a
around.
rocket. There you go. You were a
Yes.
horse. He was a rocket. It's all good.
I galloped around like I was a horse cantering. It's like me and my friend were in the playground jumping jumps on the little white lines, pretending we were horses. And it was, but we were being kids. And no one was like, yeah, Leilani, okay, let's transition you to being a horse.
A
No, it's
horse,
the
yes.
same. It's the same. It's all.
And I think it comes down to maybe like also like a safeguarding question as
Yeah.
well, because we've had sort of like local schools where one particular school was allowing the boys to come in skirts, but it was only one boy who'd actually wanted this or had obviously applied for it. So the whole school now is going to be changed or they're going to make a reparation. And that's amazing. But I mean, 10, 15 years ago, you were lucky if you got a lift for the child that was in the wheelchair. Now we're bending over backwards to
Backwards.
kind of open up spaces and places. I just think there's so much homelessness. There's so many other
Yeah.
issues where we could sort of spend and focus this energy and time. And maybe you're right. Maybe that time that we were in COVID and people were, they just had a moment to be able to focus on something. And once that belief system is there, it's
Yeah.
very hard to unpick a belief system. Although it's not a fact, it's still something you've actually learned to resonate and align
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, no, I think this is the thing. It's going to be very hard to unpick it, and
Yes.
and to kind of encourage it or enable it at a young age in school. I think it's just going to be really, really harmful. Like and as you said, when they start having to do things like making separate toilets so the kids that identify the other way have somewhere to go. That's all expense that should be really spent on schools and educating
Yes.
children, not teaching them there's 27 genders, not making
No.
extra toilets.
But also,
um
how do they know if they change their mind? Can you imagine being in a community at school where you've chosen to be a certain thing? Can you imagine the backlash you'd get if you decided to, oh, I don't want to be it anymore?
well, that's, I
I
think, what's
mean,
happened with detransitioners. There's so
yes,
many
yes.
people that have kind of said, look, I made a mistake. And we're seeing it more and more as the kids that were like 16, 17 in the USA getting like mastectomies have grown up to being like 21 years old saying, hold on, like, I don't understand. I was 16, I was in a bad place in my life, and a doctor said the solution for me would be a mastectomy. They were telling my parents that it's better that I have a
Do it
mastectomy at
now. Yep.
16 and then be dead, which would probably not, that was the whole thing. Help let her be a boy, or it's better to have an alive daughter than a or the other way around, the
A
girls.
troubled
Yeah.
child that felt so wounded. But how do we really know? I mean, maybe I just find it such massive decisions that other people are making for kids that they're front. I mean, I thought it was madness with having them vote at 16, but this is
Mm.
even more crazy because you can't reverse it.
No, you can't. And this is a thing. And when you watch these detransitioners get so attacked by the trans community, It's crazy. It's crazy. These people that said, look, I there's a woman called Chloe Cole who I think did that. She had a mastectomy and she took hormones at a young age. Now she has a deep voice. She says, I don't know if I'll ever be able to have children. I had a mastectomy at a really young age and I just have pain now. And she has got so attacked by the trans community, and it's like they don't, once they have you, they do not want you to leave, they do not want you to say I've made a mistake. And it's really important actually that these poor detransitioners have a voice and are able to speak out and do get listened to as much as the people that are encouraging young kids to
Yeah.
transition.
So there's a real level of belligerence, isn't there? That kind of inability to be able to, little bit like we have with our sort of politics now, the
Yeah,
cancel culture where one side kind of, we just know we're not hearing what you've got to say. It's just
yeah,
no. And I,
no,
I think that that's a very similar thing with,
yeah.
with this. It's just no. It's like, well, we need to have a discussion. We're never going to get it right immediately. We need to go into things more gently.
And then also you have to be able to have that discussion without people, coming out pouncing on you and saying, right, calling you names, labels, you're a
Yeah,
transphobe, like you must hate everybody, you're just a bitter, nasty person. That no, it's like I just want kids to be safe. I want kids to
yeah,
be happy in their body. I want women to feel safe going into, their own spaces and changing rooms and toilets and wherever they might
yeah.
be to be safe. And then, it's almost like the detransitioners, once they've left and they get attacked, as though they're leaving a cult almost. And they have described it like that. They're like, I was in this thing, and while I thought I was the opposite sex, I was admired and given attention, and everyone was like encouraging me, and oh, you're so brave, and you're this, and you're that. And the moment I wanted to leave, and the moment I've made a mistake in my body, they're after them. They're
Yeah,
after them as though they've
vilified.
left a cult. And the things that these poor detransitioners, um, you know, have said to them is just horrific.
And I think there's no look, there's no answer. There's no kind of like, right, we've sorted it out this evening. That's
Yeah,
it. But
yeah,
I do think when the government and other sort of spaces and places got involved in this, I think that we should have, or it should have been looked into as to the age and the places and spaces where
yes,
this was going to be rolled out, so that we could just, we didn't make parents uncomfortable. We didn't put others in uncomfortable situations who are
yeah.
not going through these sorts of things. And we don't need to blame people who are just living their lives as heterosexual people being made to feel vilified, that they're awful, terrible people that hate a sector of society, because I think that's so unfair. I just think we are allowed to say, oh gosh, that's a bit strange and a bit troubling, and I don't know
Yeah,
if I want to deal with that or how I'm going to deal with that. We were just sort of like thrown it, and we're just supposed to go, okay, we'll catch that and deal with it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And this is why I think it's just so important that for whatever the subject or topic, we should always be allowed to talk about it. Whichever side you're on,
yeah,
always be allowed to talk about it civilly and discuss it, and not have things forced upon us. And I think that's the main thing, is just really not to have anything like forced upon us and be told, like, right, this is how it is now. It's
yeah.
all changing, and you're going to have to deal with it, and your safety doesn't matter, and um, nothing matters.
Yeah, I think that is, I think you're totally right. I think that's exactly a feeling of not being forced, a feeling with not something being pushed at you,
Yeah,
something that was given to us in a feeling. There's a company at the moment who are looking to bring out a new product, and I just loved the way that they said, we're going to throw it out to our people, to the people. And they gave like, what color do you think the cap, what do you think this should be? What do you think that should be? I think we need more of that.
yes,
We
we
need
need
more of that.
more. Yeah, we
Do.
do.
We do.
We
So I think at the end
do.
of this discussion, I think, and I would love to continue this discussion or another one with you at a later date. But I think that's where we have to sort of like leave it. The fact that we just don't need to push things on
No.
one another, even in our own homes. We come home with a new idea as a kid. You always got like, you want to fight for this, you want to fight for that. But it's the discussion is actually the most fun part of family, of community. So I think we need to get back to that, making
Exactly.
discussion Fine.
discussion. But remember this at school, it used to be they'd give you a point and then it would be discuss. Now
Yeah,
it's like it just goes, and it's a diversity of ideas. We
I
shouldn't
love
be,
that.
we shouldn't just be, it's not like this is it, this is how it has to be, and if you don't, you're X, Y, and Z horrible person kind of thing.
So
So
basically, what we need to do is actually promote diversity, not in the way that it's being kind of promoted at the moment, but real diversity where everyone gets to say what they want to say.
yes,
I can't thank you
absolutely.
enough. I can't thank you enough. You've been absolutely delightful. And I have to say, I'm totally with you. We're,
Thank
we're
you.
singing off the same hymn sheet. And I really do hope that common sense prevails because I think it sometimes is just
Common
common
sense,
sense.
which isn't that common.
No, no, it's a little bit like the
No.
common man bird. He's not that common anymore
No.
either. Isn't that a shame?
So,
Right. On that note, I'm going to say thank you so, 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 so much. I really appreciate this.
thank you. Thanks.